Good afternoon. If you've seen the movie Imitation Game on Netflix, you know who Alan Turing is. And if you haven't seen the movie Imitation Game on Netflix, then do it this weekend. Because Alan Turing is to computation what Isaac Newton is to mechanics. Alan Turing is considered as the father of computer science and AI. And among his many different contributions, two most important contributions are the Turing machine, which is the concept of a computer. In fact, the modern computer is a function of the Turing machine, and it's built on that idea. But today's conversation, of course, we don't talk about the Turing machine, but we talk about the Turing test, which is a test he came up with many years ago to discover whether a machine can be intelligent. And the Turing test, therefore, tests the machine's ability to exhibit behaviors at par with humans. And the Turing test that it devised, if you look at the picture on the right side, basically is the idea as follows, that a human being who's an evaluator is sitting on behind a screen, and the other side of the screen is potentially a machine or a human being, which the evaluator does not know what it is. And you exchange messages back and forth between the evaluator and this entity on the other side. And if the entity can survive this conversation long enough to convince the evaluator that the evaluator does not know whether it's a man or a machine, then the machine has won the Turing test. Does that make sense? Let's look at the first example in history, which is one of the major conflict arenas between humans versus machines, and that is chess. For centuries, chess has been around as an example of human excellence, a game that challenges human intellect, and to be smart at chess was considered to be the ultimate pinnacle of human capability. But if you look at the graph on the right, it shows that there are two graphs. The first graph, the gentle one, which is the top, shows that humans have been getting better at chess for centuries. But machines, we started only 50, 60, 70 years ago, started on the bottom end of that curve, and that curve rises sharply until the two curves actually intersect somewhere in 1997, when you have a picture like the one on the left, where Garry Kasparov, the human world champion, is beaten by a computer called Deep Blue. Now, I was at IBM Research when this Deep Blue computer was built. I was not part of the team because I was too young and too junior, my first job. But the people who built the Deep Blue machine essentially created the first computer which challenged the human world champion, at that point, Garry Kasparov, who had this incredible track record of being the best chess player ever. And this is the picture where Deep Blue, as you can see written there, is taking on Garry Kasparov, and for the first time in the history of chess, a machine beats the best human chess player that is there. The question is, what has happened since then? 25 years have elapsed since 1997, and in these 25 years, what have we seen? We have seen that machines have gotten so good at chess that today a grandmaster, a human grandmaster, will refuse to play a machine because the result is predictable. Magnus Carlsen, the current grandmaster, has refused to play machines because he does not even rank in the top 50 of chess-playing entities in the world. Because the top 50 slots of chess winners today with high ELO ratings are all computers. In other words, once machines picked up the capability of learning chess, their learnability of chess became so fast that they overtook humans at such a high rate that today no human can actually win. So if you look at this picture here, you will notice the chess experts, the middle column, in orange, you see chess experts, and then in pink, you see the best players in the world have ELO ratings, which is the rating of how good a chess player is. A good human, like the Magnus Carlsen, who is the world best player today, has a rating of 2,882, while the best computer, Commodore, has a rating of 3,393. Some of you chess players here might know this, which means there's a 500 points of ELO rating difference between the best human and the best chess-playing computer. But when machines and humans start playing together, and that's what a cyborg is. A cyborg is a human being enhanced with machine capabilities. All of a sudden, you see the rightmost column, and all of a sudden a human who's amplified with more technology and more chess-playing machine capability can beat all of those. So therein lies a hint to you as to what lies between humans, machines, and beyond, what that beyond is. It's humans augmented by technical intelligence. So the long arc of AI, which is my talk today, is really about AI operates at many levels. AI can be our competition. AI can also be our collaborators. AI can be our companions. AI can be something we can converge with. And AI can also be conscious. And I hope to show you in the next few minutes all examples of AI doing all of these different things. So what about AI as collaboration? So think of the cyborg idea I talked about earlier. A human capable of excellence, when they augment themselves with more intelligence that comes from outside the human realm, you can become much better. Perfect example, doctors or surgeons who practice robotic surgery. There's a platform called Da Vinci, which you see here, using which a surgeon can actually do a much better job of conducting a surgery than without the robotic platform. I have a friend, Dr. Rajgopal, who is the head of urology and Apollo Hospital in Jubilee Hills. And I asked him once, when did you decide to become a robotic surgeon? And he gave me a very interesting answer. He said, I decided to become a robotic surgeon the day I realized that I can't turn my wrists 180 degrees. So if you have to turn your wrist 180 degrees to conduct a surgical operation, which is very fine, which is to give the patient more relief, less trauma, less morbidity, you want to do as little incision as possible. You need to be able to turn your wrist 180 degrees. And a robotic surgeon can do that with the help of a robotic arm. So that's an example where a surgeon who's already world-class can become far better when they augment themselves with a robotic surgical platform. Another example, once I was sitting next to a pilot who was flying as a passenger in a Boeing 777. This was many years ago. And I was traveling to the US, and next to me was this guy who was going on vacation. We started chatting, and I realized he's a commander in Emirates, and he was flying an Emirates flight with me as a passenger. He was going on a holiday. And his whole thing was, well, we are pilots, but we get paid more to fly less. So that's an interesting point. What does that mean? He said that all modern airlines today will require a pilot, a commander, to fly manually less than 5% of the time and delegate 95% of the flying to the machine. And if a pilot does not actually fly less than 5%, their bonuses get cut. If, on the other hand, they're able to let the machine fly most of the time, they get more bonuses. I leave it to you to work out why that is the case. But the point today is, a good pilot is paid more for flying less. Moving on to the next point, beyond collaboration, let's talk about companionship. What do you think is the biggest disease of the 21st century? It's called loneliness. In public health, people say that most 75% of today's elderly, 75% of people above the age of 75 are living alone. And for them, being alone and being lonely, which is, I'm sure, an experience all of you have in your family members, is a big illness, is a big difficulty, is a disorder. So can technology help that? Well, it turns out an Israeli company came up with this machine called EliQ, which is a robotic companion for the elderly. And it can actually have a conversation, it can play bridge, it can play various games, it can give you crosswords, it can track your medical schedule, it can ask you to take your medication, it can tell you to go for a walk, and keep you entertained. So think of a Siri or a Alexa for elderly people, which has very specific knowledge and wisdom to help an elderly person lead a productive and happy life. So that's an example of this. But beyond that, if you have seen the movie Ex Machina, and you've heard this expression, Deus ex machina in Latin, which means God will come from the machine. So if you've seen the movie Ex Machina, it tells you that it's quite possible, perhaps in the future, for humans and robots to become partners. So if you look at this as a concept, the whole idea is robosapiens, coined by a person called David Levy at MIT. I request you to look it up. He says by 2050, it's quite conceivable that we will think of robots or robotic entities as partners, as our children, and so forth. We could adopt robots for your kids. So that's an example of how AI can get to that point. And then if you look at beyond companionship, we can talk about convergence. If you look at convergence, this is an area where essentially, are we willing to put technology into our bodies to become more enhanced? And I think the first reaction humans have is that, oh, that sounds absurd, or that's something I wouldn't consider. But consider this. How many of you are wearing reading glasses? How many of you have hearing aids and people in your family? How many of you have seen people get pacemakers to have their hearts perform better? The answer is, obviously, all of us are willing to put technology into our bodies to perform better. So what about memory then, right? If you have Parkinson's disease today, there is technology called deep brain stimulation, which can plant a little chip in your brain, so your Parkinson's disease symptoms start to become much less obvious, and you live a better quality of life. So therefore, if you're willing to put technology into our bodies, we can certainly put them into our brains. And when we start putting technology into our brains, we can solve for disease, lead better lives, but we can do much more. If you've seen the movie Matrix, in which there's a scene of Keanu Reeves, where he says suddenly, in the middle of that brain stimulation exercise, he says, "Oh, I've just learned Kung Fu." Now imagine a situation where you want to back up your memories, because we as humans are humans only because of our memories, right? We without our memories would be nothing. So if you have to back up your memories, would you like your brain to be plugged into the cloud? And if your brain is part of the cloud, you can back up your memories. Should you need them in the future, you can download them and rebuild your memory in your brain. And that can happen. You know, people lose memories for a variety of reasons: age, disease, accidents, and so forth. But once your brain is plugged to the cloud, you can do more than just backing up your memories. You can learn. Maybe you can learn Chinese Mandarin in 2 minutes by downloading that into your brain. Maybe you're traveling to Japan and you want to speak in Japanese. You can download that into your brain. And that is the aspiration of this company called Neuralink, which is one of Elon Musk's many companies. Elon Musk's Neuralink vision is about how can we be more capable as humans, more efficient as humans, how can we learn better by connecting our brains to the cloud. And then the last part which I talked about, conscious AI. There's a big debate about what is AI and what is consciousness. In fact, this morning, New York Times has an article saying that a Columbia University researcher is working on conscious robots, robots which are self-aware, which are aware of its ability or disability. For example, when if you have a dog and the dog hits and gets injured on a leg, and maybe it can't use all 4 legs, the dog can reprogram its brain to use 3 legs and function and travel and move. Similarly, can robots become conscious enough to understand how to rewire themselves? That's the research that is going on. And of course, all of you have been talking about ChatGPT. I'm sure it's a big topic in schools. ChatGPT is now able to generate enough content that we can all pretend to be great writers. And therefore, generative AI, which is AI which generates content, right? That's becoming popular. And as you start generating more and more AI-based solutions, you approach something called singularity. What is singularity? Singularity is the idea that at some point, technology augmenting humans reaches such a tipping point, such a critical mass, that the rules of what we consider to be human does not anymore apply. And to make that point, let me show you an example. These 4 pictures are portraits drawn by Rembrandt. Rembrandt was a Dutch painter 400 years ago, and Rembrandt was known for his portraits. But the interesting thing about these 4 portraits is 3 of them are done by Rembrandt himself, and 1 is done by a computer which learned to draw like Rembrandt by studying Rembrandt's paintings. So if you give this machine about 5,000 paintings of Rembrandt, it learns to paint like Rembrandt and produces a Rembrandt-like painting. And of these 4, I'll let you decide which one it is, was done by a Rembrandt computer, Rembrandt's computer version or incarnation, right? So if Rembrandt had a technical avatar, one of them produced one of these paintings. Well, that brings me to the close of my talk, but think about this for a minute. If you can do this with Rembrandt, you can do this with 5,000 poems of Rabindranath Tagore. You can make Rabindranath Tagore come back and write new poems. You can have A.R. Rahman live on forever, because you can keep feeding this machine that you want to create more and more of Rahman songs as they're produced. And forever, the rest of eternity, that movie industry exists and audiences exist. There can be Rahman compositions coming online long after Rahman himself, sort of exists as a human being. And if you think of the piano recital we just heard before this, which I think was Beethoven, not sure, but I think it is, we could bring Beethoven back to life, or Mozart back to life, or Debussy back to life, by feeding all their compositions and symphonies and various pieces to a machine which can produce more of the same, right? That indeed is what we mean by singularity. Singularity is the idea that when you bring machines to a level of capability and augment human capability with those machines, you reach a point where the rules of what we think is possible no longer apply. Thank you very much.